And so my starting point is, I think if folks are coachable, they really are willing to have a certain level of self-awareness. They're willing to be self-reflexive. One of my favorite quotes is, the degree to which a person can be honest with themselves is the degree to which they can grow. So are they willing to really take a look at their patterns? Are they really willing to listen and receive that kind of illumination? And once they do, are they willing to take the action steps that are going to create the change?
Today, I'm joined by someone who empowers entrepreneurs to unlock their full potential and create lasting success. As an empowerment and success coach, Melanie Klein has worked with professionals in many industries, but her approach especially resonates with real estate agents. In this episode, we talk about staying resilient through market shifts, moving past the comparison trap, and creating work-life harmony. Melanie also shares what makes someone truly coachable and simple ways to move your business forward today. And of course, we wrap up with a fun round of rapid fire where Melanie pulls back the curtain on her life outside of coaching. Melanie, I am so excited to have you here today. For the people who are listening right now, what they probably don't know is we had the opportunity to get connected through Lisa Reed, an agent here at. And I think we jumped on a phone call. I don't even know, maybe it was a Zoom, but I felt like this instant connection. I feel like we could have talked. We talked for about 45 minutes, but we could have talked for a few hours.
Absolutely.
And I just feel that we have so many similar thoughts as it relates to real estate agents and mindset and all of these different things. So I'm thrilled to have you here today. But I want our listeners to learn a little bit more about you and kind of how you got into becoming an empowerment and success coach. So tell me a little bit about your story. How'd you get here?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've been really excited to continue our conversation. Thank you to Lisa for introducing us. So my background is actually as a professor of sociology and women's studies. And I paired my sort of social advocacy and leadership work with also a lot of mindfulness embodiment work. So in the early 90s, as a young woman coming into my first women's studies class, I felt incredibly empowered. I felt very awakened. And then a couple of years later, I walked into my first yoga class where really like one was about the intellect, one was about understanding and theorizing and making sense of the world and my place in it. And the other one was embodying a new way of being. And so that was a really liberatory moment in my life as a young woman. And then fast forward, I had become a professor for many years, and at a certain point realized that there was a limitation about what I could do as a professor and mentor in the classroom. And even with, putting on events and facilitating conversations on campuses, I didn't feel I could really utilize my full skill set. So I felt it was time to leave my tenure track position, which was quite sacrilegious for people because I had worked for a long time to become tenure track, and within 18 months realized that if I stayed there, I would probably kind of flatline. And so I took the leap into entrepreneurship, started coaching, and I was working with entrepreneurs really across fields. So creatives, directors, producers, tech, lawyers, et cetera. And the one through line for all of those folks really was the empowerment piece, which has been, I would say, the through line of my whole life. So, that becomes the entry point, and then whatever it is that they specifically needed to resolve, we would work on. So several years into doing that, one of my former students, which I love that this happened, we had gone to lunch and we were sort of catching up on where we were at, where I was at in my career, what she had done after graduate school. And she had been a realtor for several years. And she just wanted to break $100,000 at that particular point. So we always say that lunch changed both of our lives because she ended up going on to being the number one top agent in the West Hollywood office, Sunset, $1 million earner 5 years in a row for the last 5 years. And she introduced me to the women who were running Women of Compass at the time, Courtney Smith and Denise Freed. And I thought to myself, what in the world could I have in common with realtors? I really had, honestly, a jaded, stereotypical perspective that it was all quantitative, it's all numbers and money driven. And we did our first event, and I was incredibly impressed with the caliber of people that I met. And that was, I don't know, it was like a peak moment for me, for where I went thinking that all of the tools that I had utilized in meditation, embodiment, etc., that was sort of the key to awakening, freedom, liberation, whatever you want to call it. But I realized that it was really these kinds of entrepreneurs that if they were going to have sustainable success, it is a requirement and a demand that they would do the deep work. And they were willing to do the deep work. And they showed up with such a high level of professionalism. Honestly, I became enamored. And now 95% of my client base is all realtors. Yeah.
I love that because I think we need you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate, your story of kind of going into what you thought the real estate world was and what you really learned about it. And I will tell you, prior to getting into real estate, I was in corporate America. And when I got my license, I too think what I thought about going into real estate ended up being different once I got here and became an agent and just realized that the business is relationships. It is personal. It is, and because of that, it takes a toll on us differently than being in, maybe different industries, but with this type of entrepreneurship. So, when you talk about really kind of having to look on the inside, I think it's because it's so personal and because of the type of work that we are doing for people and helping them with, purchasing an asset, yes, but finding a place to call home. There's just a different responsibility there, right? So, so I appreciate that you've fallen in love with it. So I want to ask though, you've worked with people in different industries, but your approach seems to really resonate with agents. And I think it's because of this internal work. What qualities do you see? And I love this term, but what qualities do you see that are most coachable? Like when you find people that are the most coachable, what do they look like, or where are they at in their career so that they are ready for it?
Perfect question. I had a woman years ago come to me. Her name is Rosalie, and we always talk about this. And one of the first things she said to me, she's like, I heard that I'm uncoachable. And I went, well, the fact that you just said that means you probably aren't. And so my starting point is, I think if folks are coachable, they really are willing to have a certain level of self-awareness. They're willing to be self-reflexive. One of my favorite quotes is, the degree to which a person can be honest with themselves is the degree to which they can grow. So are they willing to really take a look at their patterns? Are they really willing to listen and receive that kind of illumination? And once they do, are they willing to take the action steps that are going to create the change? And so if someone just has an idea of where they want to go, but they really are going to resist and they are not willing to hear anything, they're not willing to take a look, they're not willing to ask new questions, and they're definitely not willing to, to change behaviors even on the micro level, then they're certainly not coachable. Also, people who have a tremendous need to be right or to prove something. There's been times where, I'll point something out and, there's almost this sense of like, I need to defend, I'm actually doing all of these things. It's like, well, but we're not talking about all the things that you're doing. We're looking at this one particular place where maybe you're not doing that. And so folks who really need to always, almost like want to turn my attention to all the places that they're fantastic, that is a pretty big indication to me that they're not that coachable, because that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for where are the gaps. So that's huge.
And I think sometimes it falls into this idea of weakness, right? That if I don't have all of the answers, that it's a sign of weakness. But, even in my own experience, I've been through different roles, as an agent with At Properties, and then even, exploring my own growth in different roles on the company side of At Properties. And I've had to learn a lot, even, where in a certain role, maybe I had plateaued and I had done it, had done really well. In order for me to grow, I kind of needed that coaching or that ability to be willing to get feedback. And, and I think instead of people seeing it as a weakness, I actually think if somebody can recognize being willing to be open to getting feedback on what you can be doing better is true leadership.
Oh, 100%. There's, I think, a lot of bravery and strength required to go ahead and do that deep work and look. I also think in terms of, having a constant desire to evolve and grow and not looking for the place that they can settle or plant their flag and stay there, but recognize that the entire process of just living a meaningful life, if we're going from the realm of positive psychology, one that has meaning, that has impact, where you have achievement, the only thing that you can do is to grow. And if we recognize that, there's this enthusiasm, I think, for it.
Yeah.
So I'm always also looking for people who, are you enthusiastic about what is about to transpire? Are you enthusiastic and willing to take a look and recognize there's also a lot of joy and fun in the process? Like, I find it incredibly exciting to take a look at those moments within myself where I'm like, oh, okay, here's a growth edge. Here's an upper limiter. What's on the other side? That's incredibly enticing for me at this point.
And I love the idea of, being energized about something, but also being curious, and I've tried to tell myself that sometimes when I'm in a situation and maybe I don't agree with the conversation, it's kind of being curious, and curiosity comes with asking questions. And I realized that by doing that, you end up really getting so much more from the other person, but also learning more about an opinion or a situation or a perspective. But I love that. So
can I say one thing about that?
Of course you can.
Of course, I knew that as soon as we were starting to chat, I'm like, oh, there's going to be so many great nooks and crannies. So when you're talking about that curiosity and, the enthusiasm of like, what's there and asking new questions, how could it feel like, look like, sound like differently? To me, that's when I also talk, it's not just about being empowered, but it's about having a really expansive lens on what becomes possible. I oftentimes talk about, can we widen the aperture? Because I think people have oftentimes a very narrow lens, and that's something that's learned, right? I mean, our entire identity is learned essentially until we become conscious. It's so small about what we think is possible. And so it's hard to see outside of that. But if we start to recognize with that curiosity, and I would even dare say whimsy about the whole thing, like there's so much more that's possible. And, can we get excited about that? And can we ask those new questions? We can pair the curiosity with the enthusiasm, with the empowerment, and it becomes such a rich and rewarding experience that, once you open the door, it's really hard to close it. And so I feel it's just that entry point is sometimes for a lot of people is the main thing. Can you actually plant both feet inside that next room and then keep walking,
And I like that so much, because I think when it comes to real estate, the markets have highs and lows, and there's sometimes fear takes over, right? And it kind of shuts us down and it makes us afraid. It makes us, when I say us, I'm saying just collectively as agents, it's like it becomes a grind, and it's like, where can you get back to that place of being curious, excited, because that's where the magic happens. And, I think I've seen aha moments for agents where they will say, I'm really worried right now, but I'm just going to move forward with good energy. And it's amazing how the world opens up for them and an opportunity presents itself simply because of the way that they're occupying space in the universe. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Oh, I have so many. I'm actually, my second TEDx that I'm working on right now that's coming out in November, or that I'm delivering in November, is really this concept of, I talk about there are these different levels to life. Like it's really just a game in a lot of ways. Level one is this idea that, we're just like stuck in the muck. It's hard. We're really incredibly fragile. And we ask the question of, how did I get here? Why me? Right? And there's fear, there's resentment, despair. Level two is that adaptability or resilience that is, so incredibly important in growth work, where you look behind you and go, oh, okay, what did I learn here? But level three is the sense of when we start to, minimize the amount of time where we're careening off course because we know that the challenge offers such an incredible opportunity. And so the question becomes, what does this moment require of me? And I just love this concept of like, how can we meet the moment? And before we understand the lesson or the gift involved, we already know that there is one. And that to me is really powerful. And given that I'm now over 50, I'm really looking to have the most efficient route to growth, if that makes sense. And so, what you're describing there just reminds me so much of that concept of like, I already know that this is going to be helpful. And then secondarily, when you were talking about that fear, coming from a mindfulness embodiment background, I would go on 10-day silent meditation retreats. Okay.
The word silent sounds very difficult for me. I'm just going to be honest.
Everybody used to tell me that. They said, that's going to be the hardest thing for you. It was glorious. I'm not going to lie. When noble silence was over, I'd be like, oh, I'm not ready. But for 10 days, no eye contact, no communication. And we would meditate basically all day. And that particular meditation, Vipassana meditation, it's not about visualization. It's not about mantra. It's not about breath. It is actually about tuning into your sensations, where you become very attuned to the subtle energies in the body. And when you do that, you can recognize when fear, stress, and worry is beginning, because those things, those feelings, stress, worry, whatever it happens to be, joy, they're just sensations in the body that we have named something. And so I really like to talk to my clients about, hey, you're going to get physical clues. And the more tuned and aware you can get to the physical clues you're about to go down this street, the more quickly you can go ahead and redirect. And you can also disassociate, oh, this is my fear. What about it's just the sensation? And so we can start to eliminate the amount of time that we start to operate in chaos or fear, because the world is reflecting back what's going on in the inside. So anyway,
it's amazing.
So much.
Well, it's like, it's kind of like naming it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm naming it, I'm kind of categorizing it. And I think that's part of it, is really sort of knowing, to your point, when that type of stuff happens. So let's bring it back to our agents, right? Because I think one of the things is there's a lot of highs and lows. There's a lot of emotions that can go into being in this business. And sometimes there are things that are, beyond our control, and that's really hard. The economy, right now we're dealing with lack of inventory in a lot of our markets. And so no matter, how hard agents are working, sometimes there's only so many houses that are going to be sold, right?
Yes.
So then the financial side of things becomes very stressful, and during the pandemic, it was really, the market was easy. And now we're kind of in this more challenging spell. How do you coach agents to really sort of stay resilient? And I kind of want to say, even further than this, what are some like tactical things that you have them do? Like, what actions do you have agents taking? Because if somebody's listening and they're like, I am feeling this right now, what can they do? Like 1 or 2 things that you feel like can help them kind of redirect, as you had said, or kind of name what they're feeling, categorize it, so they can kind of move on and progress.
Yeah. So several things. One, I think most simply, when you talk about naming it and categorizing it, is to have that awareness of, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's happening, this is why. To have the awareness, you don't need to stay there, right? So if you can almost like, this is the reality of the moment, what's the choice that I want to make? That becomes a very empowering and conscious pivot that one can create. So I have an AM PM routine that I give a lot of folks, and I'll share it here, which is, 1, you wake up in the morning, you have some level of mindfulness, take a breath, whatever, do your gratitude, and then go into, what are the 3 things that I want to accomplish today? 2, how do I want to feel today? Which might surprise people that is a choice. 3, how do I have to show up for myself to do and to feel, those 2 things that I listed. And 4, what do I want to let go from yesterday? And in the PM, there is a conscious reflection of, did I accomplish this? Did I complete this? Did I feel this way? How did I show up? What can I change tomorrow? And so all of the through line of what I'm talking about is, we have choices all along the way. And if we can recognize we have those choices, we don't have to feel engulfed by whatever it is that we're feeling. So name what's happening. 2, make a choice. Do you want to continue to feel this way? Do you want to do something else? How can I go into an action that is going to bring me closer to actually how I want to feel and where I want to go? The other thing about choice is, when they feel stuck, like, this is beyond my control, is like, at every moment you also have a choice. You can do something else. And when people say, well, I don't want to do something else, it would require X, Y, and Z. Okay, great. So you're choosing to continue to do this. And if you're going to continue to choose to do this, how are you going to meet the moment, right? That level 3 kind of perspective, to actually optimize the energy, right, of focus, time, and money that you're putting into this. So those are just a few things. I will also say, I think it's very important to kind of plot and track reality. Okay. So I have people track wins, large and small, and it's not just a feel good exercise, right? It is really to get data points, where a lot of times people also try to talk themselves out of progress. They like to sometimes get even more hyperbolic about a situation than it truly is. So if you can actually look back at your data points to see what your wins have been, large and small, you oftentimes can reset the story in your head to the reality of what's happening, which is also very helpful.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's those are all great. And I almost think, like, when you were saying plotting things and when things were successful, I almost think of like dopamine, right? Like I think there's a lot that goes into, like, I think about when I have a lot of stress or anxiety, or I'm sort of feeling not grounded, movement is great for me.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's walking, yoga, I'm not quite so flexible, but I do enjoy it. It's just hard for me. But,
Yeah.
you know, just doing something that changes how I'm feeling gets me to a totally different space about how I'm then thinking about things. And so one of the things I want to ask you is, you know, there's so many agents that tend to compare. They're always like looking around at, you know, what everybody else is doing. How do you get your clients to stop looking everywhere else and kind of really just focusing on, you know, it's their lane, it's their race, it's their pace?
Well, first, I want to acknowledge that what you said about I do something to kind of get me out of that. That is what you call a pattern interrupt. So that's another tool that I would encourage people to think about. What is the pattern interrupt that I can take, whether it's like you going for a walk or perhaps doing yoga? Maybe it is just getting up from your computer and walking outside and taking a moment. When we do that, we really can adjust the lens. So that's a really good one, Amy. As far as the comparison, you know, that is such a fascinating one, right? Because here's the truth. One of the first things that I have people ask, do you actually want what this person has? Like, that's the first thing, right? When we talked about being honest, and the degree to which you're honest is the degree to which you can grow. I find that sometimes people are comparing themselves against relationships, agents, the kind of business that they have, the teams that they have. I'm like, is this something that you want? Well, actually, no. Okay. So we can stop it right there. Like, whatever storyline that they're feeding, that usually comes from, you know, I felt like I was invisible, or I felt that I was overlooked when it was time to be, you know, play dodgeball, whatever it is. That's an old narrative. In this moment, is this something you want? Because if the answer is yes, great. So let's use this as something aspirational. Let's go ahead and then craft a vision, and let's go ahead and create, right, an arc to get there. And so one is either letting go, like, no, I actually don't want to get there. This is about something else. Two, I do. So instead of feeling like I'm going to compare or go into any kind of envy or anything else, I'm going to use this as inspiration, and I'm going to go ahead and redraft what my weeks, my days, my quarters look like, and take actions and create habits that is going to support that vision. The other thing about that for comparison is, you know, when you're like, yes, I want that. Great. Let's go ahead and track what those activities and habits might be. Are you willing to do that?
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's great. It's so easy to be like, I want that. But what I was going to say, you know, in alignment with you, is that what a lot of times people don't recognize is all the hard work or the sacrifice, or what this person had to do or is willing to do to get to where they're at. And sometimes once they know that, it's kind of like, maybe I don't want it so much.
And so it's, again, it comes back down. Are you willing to be honest with yourself? Are you willing to have an honest conversation? A friend of mine who I've known for 30 years, she's seen me from the time I went that moment in my women's studies class through grad school, left, you know, academia, went into entrepreneurship. And she's just seen the growth arc across the board. And there are certain things she says at times. She's like, you know, there's moments where when you travel or you do this, she's like, I feel envy. And she's like, I have to remind myself, there's no way I would ever be willing to do what you've done to get here. She's like, so I let it go. And it's just really fun to watch you doing that. And that's also freedom, because you've just reclaimed your mental space, your energy space to do something else, as opposed to getting caught up in what somebody else is doing that you would never actually do.
It is. I think that's so powerful, because I think all of us, it's human nature to see somebody else. And, you know, and you look at people, whether they're actresses or, you know, people who have suddenly a glamorous life, right? And you're thinking what we don't see or what we don't know, or all the callbacks they didn't get, or all of, you know, the eating ramen noodles for 5 years, right? It's once they've achieved that space and suddenly everyone is recognizing them, they don't see all of the behind the scenes of really kind of getting there. Yeah,
it's putting people on a pedestal. I think it's taking away the humanity of the experience, and like they become either a caricature or some kind of an icon. And to be honest, I feel so incredibly privileged and honored to work with the clients that I work with. I get to see them, you know, we do primarily Zoom because I have clients across the country. Their dogs walking in the background, their toddlers knocking on the door, you know, they go into comparison, and they go into fatigue, and we do the work and they keep showing up. And so I know the real life stuff that happens, the way that people dig in. And so when I hear others who are like, oh, you're working with so-and-so, and like, oh my gosh, they have it so together. I'm like, no, actually, they're just another person.
Yeah.
And they're really doing the work. And
Yeah.
so then it's a matter, and I don't always say that, but are you willing
Yeah.
to make the investment of time, money, and energy to be coached at that level, to execute at that level? And a lot of times it's not, but it's not a perfect picture.
Yeah.
They're messy people willing to work that out and get better.
I love that. And, sometimes people then, once they do know that, the answer is no. They don't want to sacrifice what they have to get the same thing. So you talk a lot about, we know that there is this concept of work-life balance.
Yeah.
Let me know when anybody figures that out. But
Right.
actually, you don't even use that term. You like to call it work-life harmony.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about, Melanie, how I can get work-life harmony.
Well, I think, first of all, you talked several times about how we name things. And, coming from my background also as a sociologist, the way we name things, the way that we identify and label is truly how we construct our reality, right? That's how humans have a shared culture. And so it's important to really be thinking about those things. And work-life balance to me just inherently feels like such a shaming term. Because like you said, I don't even know really what that means or looks like for all people. But if we say that there's this concept, this idea that we can aspire to, what it naturally does is I think it makes people feel deflated. So first and foremost, I think people are going to already be winning if they simply do away with the idea that I'm trying to aspire to a thing that really doesn't exist.
Well, and if you think of balance, I think 50-50. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
equal on both sides.
Yes.
And let's face it, sometimes work and home are not equal on both sides. Sometimes
Correct.
one needs more nurturing than the other, right? So I think harmony probably is more accurate in that regard then.
Right. And also, I mentioned, so I'm 53 now, and what the kind of time, energy, and focus I had when I was 25, I became a mom when I was 36, like all of that looks different. And so it comes back down again to get real with yourself. Like, let's really look at what's happening. One, where are you? Two, where do you want to go? And that requires you to be clear on the season of your life, where your family is at. All right. A lot of my clients now have, I'd say some have children under 5. That to me is like a distant memory now, right? That I have a 16-year-old. And I remember what that requires of them and some of the obstacles. Where are you at in the phase of your business? Are you looking for a succession plan? Are you looking to bring more people on? And also what part of the year is it? And so I think when people can look at that, what's really helpful is like, okay, this moment is requiring a little bit more of my energy. Like we're building, we're lifting, and there's naturally going to be a cycle on the other end. Now, if you stay in this constantly, I'm going to tell you that's problematic. You should probably restructure how things are going. But if there are moments of peak activity and you come down, when you're in the peak activity, you don't get as overwhelmed because you know that you have built your team, your life, your business, that there's going to be a downturn. And when you're in the downturn, you don't freak out either, because that's also been designed where you can take an exhale and then take a new inhale, as opposed to being in the roller coaster. I think I've seen clients do. They're like, oh my gosh, I have so much. I just need a break. I need a break. Then they get a break. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. When's my next deal? And they're not enjoying either one of those moments.
I used to do that, and I regretted it so much because I would be so crazed. Then I would have a moment to breathe and do all the things that I never got a chance to do, but I would stress about work. So then I would stress and not enjoy, and then I would get busy again. It's a tough roller coaster, So knowing the psyche of agents, and we've talked about a lot of great concepts. And I know you talked about having a morning routine and an evening routine. Is that where I want from you, where do I start as an agent? I'm hearing Melanie talk, and a lot of this is resonating. But like, what action? What's like the first thing that I can do? Just a simple step just to get me moving. Is it as simple as starting to recognize when I'm feeling a certain way and changing the environment, like getting up and walking around the block? Or, what's something that is an easy, not too hard to do, that can just have that little bit of maybe moving the needle for me?
first of all, I have to say, I wish I was that person who could just give easy things, because everything is so complex and nuanced, and it's so personal, right? So I'm sitting here going, yes, that is one thing if it is for this particular person. Okay. But yes, that is certainly one thing, is start to just actually be aware about how you're responding to your environment, and take that extra moment to be intentional. It also includes like, hey, if you're looking, let's say you're saying, I want to increase my price point. I want to, I hear that all the time in my mind. I'm like, you're actually not ready for that, but okay. Then why don't you prepare a little bit more, be more intentional about when you go into conversations, and start to recognize that maybe you've actually been flying by the seat of your pants. Mm-hmm. Another thing would be like, why don't you plot out each day and like take an honest assessment also of what you actually did that day. Sometimes I have people log and really take a look, get that honesty of, did you do all the things you say you did? I don't think you did. And if you did, you probably shouldn't have been doing all those things. How did you actually spend your time? How many honest work hours were actually in your day? And it's interesting. Sometimes people recognize, oh, I spent actually 2 hours. Oh,
time trap. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's a side hustle. That's not a career.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few things, and hopefully of those 3 or 4 things we just mentioned, whoever's listening, they can go, okay, that's the one that I'm going to start with.
Yeah. Well, time is such a critical one. Because I think if you give yourself 20 minutes to do something or 2 hours, you're going to take whatever time you've allotted, right? So I think what you're saying, I love the idea of plotting your week and really getting, and here's the thing. At some point, we have to get real. You can coach so many people, but I think the part of coachability is being ready to receive and ready to know, like, in order for me to really see something different happening, then I've got to do something different. And also knowing, because I know this about myself, I can't always get there myself, because I do a really good job of out talking myself into
the smarties will do that.
Yes. So
well, I will say, that is an interesting thing, right? For those who have, really high caliber intellects, it's so easy to justify, rationalize, and reason things, which is why I say, like, let's just get real, like, be real with yourself, because we usually know when we're bullshitting ourselves. Like, let's do away with that.
I need somebody to call me on my crap most
yes.
of the time.
And be so grateful when they do.
Yes.
But I also think, in terms of that piece of like looking at the time and what they're actually doing, is to also ask the question, am I really investing in this as a career? Or is this just something that I say that I'm doing? And there's also quite a departure, I think, in the folks that are really looking at it as their career, as opposed to people who are doing something else. You know?
I mean, I think that is a great thing for everybody to take a look at, as they're looking to run their business. So I've loved this. I mean, honestly, we could talk for 2 more hours, but I think this whole crew sitting in here would kick us out. But we are going to move to rapid fire. Which is the fun part of core values. And we're going to talk about Klein time. That is Melanie Klein time. So I've got some fun, quick, rapid fire questions, and I can't wait to hear your answers.
Okay.
First, if you could coach any fictional character, who would it be and why?
Oh, I would actually choose Wednesday Addams from the new Wednesday series.
Okay.
I would love to see her actually amplify and her entire personality. Right? Because I would just love to see what else is possible from this very, you know what I mean? I don't know, one note character to a degree.
Yeah.
She's got a very fixed way of being, and I'd love to see what's on the other side of that.
Love to crack it wide open.
Yeah.
Huh? Yes.
Yeah.
What's the biggest misconception people have about your job?
Oh, that every moment is inspirational.
Uh-oh. It might not be so easy to be sitting across from you on Zoom or in your hot chair then. Huh?
Yeah.
I know that you love the outdoors, you love yoga. Where is your favorite place to go hiking?
Oh, I would say in the mountains in Southern California, and also Central Coast, Big Sur, places like that.
Beautiful. Yes, I love it. It's been a long time since I've been out there, but gorgeous. What's your biggest guilty pleasure?
Chocolate Monster ice cream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and Netflix.
Oh, yes. I'm right there with you.
Both
Netflix
at the same time.
Double whammy.
Yeah.
What was the last show you binge watched?
Wednesday.
Really? Okay. I haven't watched it. So worth it?
Yes.
Okay.
Season 2 is not as good as season 1. It's a little more of a caricature, but it's certainly fun.
Okay.
It's certainly fun.
All right.
It's very dark.
It wasn't that high on my list, but I'm gonna.
Well, I
move
was
on
a goth when I was younger, so. Yeah.
All righty.
Yeah.
It's something we didn't know. If you weren't doing what you're doing right now, what do you think your profession would be?
When I was a young girl, I used to say I wanted to be a trucker.
Oh,
because
okay.
I wanted to just be free and travel around the country.
I love it.
Right.
And now you're traveling around the country, maybe not always free, busy, but.
And I'd say that I'm doing it a little bit better than a trucker. So yeah, maybe
yes.
I did get some of that.
I would agree with that. All right. Last question. What's something people might be surprised to learn about you?
That my first job was at Chuck E. Cheese, and I used to dress up as the mouse at children's parties.
You did.
I did.
Wow, that is impressive.
Yeah.
That is a story and a whole conversation in and of itself, right?
It
Another
is.
date, another time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Melanie, it was so great having you on the show. Again, I wish we could talk for hours, but I loved these nuggets that you gave to our agents, and we're going to have Melanie's information if you are curious about what it looks like to be able to be coached by her or any of the workshops you might be doing in the future. So we'll get those details to you. But thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Core Values.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie.